Whether it's been research and training response to major events like the World Trade Center, Hurricane Katrina, Superstorm Sandy, our Ebola response, or the Gulf oil spill, or the daily protection that goes on of firefighters, chemical workers, and communities impacted by Superfund sites. Our programs have always worked to be in forefront of developing innovative programs and innovative technology to protect communities across the nation and the world.
The first workers that went on the ground in World Trade Center didn't have respirators. A lot of people were exposed and had breathed volatile chemicals and particles, particulates that were not healthy. We were able to bring these scientists together so they could advise the city government as to how to deal with the crisis. They could hold town meetings with the public. The research was initiated immediately. In other words, you need to know what happened on day 1, day 2, and what were the exposure levels. You need to be collecting samples. And so we did that.
In our collection of programs in the New York City area, we're caring for about 35,000 of the men and women who are the first responders. And there are vast numbers of them who still have asthma and gastroesophageal disease, not to speak of mental health problems. The great tragedy of this is these were previously healthy people. These were marathon runners, these were weightlifters, these were cops, these were firefighters.
This program began with the notion of protecting people from toxic waste and exposure. Really came about as they began to clean up these toxic sites. And many of the workers, laborers, or operating engineers, or technicians were the EPA, or the Coast Guard, or people who were in the government. And the government people were going around in moon suits, and the workers were in boots and flannels and so forth. And there was some concern about what were they being exposed to. You remember the Exxon Valdez, where that was our first Superfund SARA experience in having people who were brought out in these disasters wiping up the oil spills with paper towels. And for those people who are first responders and those people who are going to go into those activities, it has taken almost 30 years, but it is a sea change in worker protection.
There was no OSHA, there was no NIEHS. There was a bureau on a little street down in Cincinnati, but there was nothing going on essentially in occupational health.
You can breathe in a fume and you won't really have an impact of it for 35 years. And so what you're trying to do is a prevention program.
The Superfund Basic Research Program, for the first time, legitimized academic, community-based work could be recognized for promotion and tenure in a university. So we created a new cohort of university scientists.
A generation ago, environmental health science was hardly existed within universities, and if it did exist, it was a marginalized orphan program at the edge of the campus. The Superfund research played a central role in controlling exposure to benzene, which is a known cause of leukemia and lymphoma.
The way we teach it very often to the general public, and the Superfund has a major approach to the general public, is to talk about the difference between a garter snake and a rattlesnake. I mean, a garter snake is basically harmless to humans. A rattlesnake isn't. If you're never exposed to a rattlesnake, though, your risk is 0.
It has generated new methods of doing things. For example, it's a collaboration that University of Washington had with one of the petroleum industry. And it was to develop hybrid poplar trees, this is a tree, to extract chlorinated compounds out of water. So they genetically engineered a poplar tree, and they just plant it to trees. The trees take up the water that contains chlorinated compounds, and it converts the chemical to harmless products like CO2 and chloride. And that's a technology that can get a patent for, and industry can develop the product and make money on it. And eventually, in fact, we created a small innovation grants to make sure that the products and the knowledge that was generated by this program would have an easy access to entrepreneurs who could develop these businesses.
The Superfund research program at NIEHS has made a tremendous difference to one of the most important things that we have in the U.S., which is scientific human capital.
Exxon Valdez oil spill occurred right when the NIEHS was getting off the ground. We were lucky because we had this previous work that was from the OSHA funding to train people, but their training was completely ignored because we got calls from all these guys who had 80 hours of hazardous waste training who were told, well, you still have to take the 2-hour Exxon training, where the instructors let you sleep in the back of the room and talked about workers as monkeys in white suits.
We've trained in the New York, New Jersey area alone, literally hundreds of thousands of workers so that they know how to better remove the materials.
We had done a lot of HAZWOPER training with the laborers union. It was really a good program. And they had, people would beat down the doors to get into class. They would almost fight in the parking lot to get a space on Monday morning.
And we've trained over 11,000 workers in what we now call the Environmental Careers Worker Training Program. And we've reached over 32 communities across the U.S. and in 21 states. And our overall job placement rate is around 71%.
It covers areas that just a plain worker training program in a factory wouldn't cover.
We created a minority worker component to the Superfund, and it provided training to individuals who were not historically part of the labor unions.
What we realized after Superstorm Sandy devastated New York City and many of our communities was that our membership, the immigrant community, were the first responders to go and help in the reconstructions of our city and our state. Unfortunately, that community did not know their rights, did not know or had access to health and safety training, not only in a manner or in a language that they understood.
First of all, I always teach our students, and when we do worker training, disasters happen cyclically, they happen regularly, and we're no exception to any of them. That preparedness is really, really critical because they are not going to stop happening.
If you gave each of those experts a piece of paper and said, put the 10 major problems that you foresee for the next decade on this piece of paper, I guarantee you there will be at least one major environmental problem that nobody in this room foresees. And that's the nature of it. So we need a very strong, vibrant program to be able to react very quickly when these problems do develop. And more importantly, we need a program that's able to anticipate the problems so they don't happen in the first place.
It's more than just bench to bedside. It's bench and population-based studies in communities and bringing in the engineers and the geochemists and what have you to be able to do things in a real-time way that is translatable to the community. But it has to be a two-way street.
I know that our whole Superfund program is going to continue to grow and make important contributions to preventing environmentally related illness and disease. And we have supported the development of programs that are at the forefront of community input and participation with regard to environmental health and public health concerns.